This is Mrs. Wainwright's Math Class, Chapter 2, Lesson 2B, Multiplication and Division with Algebra. Today's learning target: by the end of the lesson, you should confidently be able to say, I can use algebra to find the missing part of a multiplication problem, or I can use algebra to find the missing parts of a division problem. Algebra requires us to find an unknown number. The unknown number is often shown or represented by a letter rather than by a blank. N is a letter that's often used, X is a letter that's often used, but really any letter at all can be used. We need to use our knowledge of math to figure out what the missing number is. Directions for an algebra problem may ask you to find the value, or they may ask you to solve for the unknown. Let's take a look at some examples to see how this is done. Number 1 says solve for the unknown value. So again, the problem is n divided by 7 equals 63. This is what I'll think. If I were checking this problem, I would say 63 times 7, so write it down, 63 times 7. I would add the remainder, so there is no remainder, so actually that answer should equal my dividend, or the number inside the box. So let's go ahead and solve and find out the answer to 63 times 7. 7 times 3 is 21, put down the 1, carry the 2. 7 times 6 is 42, plus 2 is 44, put down the 44. And again, there's no remainder, so there's nothing to add, so therefore that 441 should be the same number that's the dividend, or inside the box. So n, or the number inside the box, equals 441. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 1 right now. Remember, you can go back to this problem, follow it with me step by step by rewinding, playing, and pressing pause to solve your problem. Let's take a look at number 2. Number 2 says find the value of n. And I have a division problem. 752 divided by 6 equals 125 remainder n. So I see that my n is my remainder. That's what I need to figure out. What is the remainder? So this is what I'll think as I solve the problem. If I were to check this problem, I would say 125 times 6. So let's do that. 125 times 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Put down the 0, carry the 3. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Put down the 5, carry the 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Next I would add my remainder. My remainder is n, so I'll just write plus n. And once I add that remainder, if the problem is correct, it should equal the number that's inside the box, or the dividend. So I know that when I add 750 plus n, my answer should be 752. Because I know when checking a division problem, these two numbers must be equal to be correct. So now I just have to figure out what n is equal to. And n is like my blank or my question mark. So 750 plus what equals 752? Well, I can simply count on. I say 750 while I put my chin to my shoulder, 750, and then I count with my fingers until I get to 752. So chin to shoulder, 750, 751, 752. I have 2 fingers up, so that question mark, or that n, is a 2. Therefore, n equals 2. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 2 right now. Sometimes you'll be given an algebra problem with multiplication. Let's take a look at example number 3 to see how this is done. Number 3 says find the unknown number. Y equals 125 times 6 plus 5. So I need to figure out what y is equal to. Well, let's go through and solve what I know. And if I was looking at my problem, I would say 125 times 6, and I would solve that first. I don't know that by heart, so I'll use a little scrap paper. 125 times 6, and let's solve. 6 times 5 is 30, put down the 0, carry the 3. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Put down the 5, carry the 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So I know that 125 times 6 equals 750. Let's write that underneath it. And let's move everything else down. So I'm going to bring down the y equals the plus and the 5. This is my new problem. Y equals 750 plus 5. So now for this new problem, again, I solve for what I know, or what I can figure out. And I can figure out that what 750 plus 5 equals. If you can figure it out in your head, that's great. If you need to use the little scrap paper, that's fine too. Let's write it down. 750 plus 5. 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 plus nothing is 5. 7 plus nothing is 7. So I found that 750 plus 5 equals 755, and I'll write that down under my circle. Now bring down everything else that I still know, and that's my y and my equal sign. So now I've finished solving this problem, and I have found that y equals 755. So you do one step at a time till you eventually figure out the answer. Please stop and complete worksheet number 3 right now. Let's take a look at our last example, example number 4. Example number 4 says find the value of s. 713 equals 3 times 237 plus s. S is my unknown. I don't know what it is. I have to figure it out. So I'm going to solve what I can first. And what I can solve is 3 times 237. I don't know that by heart, so I'll use some scrap paper. I always put the number with the most digits on top. So I'll say 237 times 3, and let's solve. 3 times 7 is 21. Put down the 1, carry the 2. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. Put down the 1, carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So 237 times 3 equals 711. Write that underneath the circle. Bring down everything else that I know, which is 713 equals, and then plus the s. Now again, let's go ahead and solve what we know. The only problem is I don't know what 711 plus s is equal to, but maybe I do. Let's take a look at this. If I look at that whole problem and I take a minute to think about it, it's really saying 713 equals 711 plus blank. So maybe I can flip it around. I can say 711 plus s is going to equal 713. And I don't know about you, but when I look at it this way, I look at it vertically from top to bottom, I kind of see what the answer should be. 711 plus what equals 713? Again, I can count using my shoulder. I say my first number, 711, with my chin to my shoulder. Put fingers up as I continue. 712, 713. I have 2 fingers up, so I'm thinking s should equal 2. Let's check it out. Is 711 plus 2 713? Yes, it is, so I give myself a happy face. So for this problem, s equals 2. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 4 right now. So let's review this lesson. Algebra requires us to find an unknown number. The unknown number is often shown by a letter rather than a blank. We need to use our knowledge of math to figure out what that missing number or that letter is. Directions may ask you to find the value or to solve for the unknown. If you're given a division problem with a variable, you can use your knowledge of checking a division problem to help you find the value of the problem. So in this case, I did my check, 63 times 7, and whatever that equaled to, since there was no remainder to add on, should be the number inside the box or the dividend. And since n is the dividend, n would equal 441. In problem number 2, I needed to find the value of n, and that was my remainder. So again, I went through my steps for my check. 125 times 6 equaled 750. I know I have to add my remainder, and that final answer should be my dividend, which is 752. So I had to say 750 plus what is 752? It's 2. So n equals 2. Sometimes we're given an algebra problem with multiplication, and then of course we solve what we can, bringing everything else down. So in this problem, I first solved 125 times 6 equals 750. I wrote it down. I brought down the y and the equal on the left, and the plus and the 5 on the right. Then I went ahead and solved my 750 plus 5 equals 755, brought that down, and then brought down my y and my equal. So I found out that y equals 755. And finally, some problems require a little more thought process. In number 4, I had to find the value of s. So again, I solved for what I knew, 3 times 237. I found that that answer was 711. Brought everything else down, my 713, my equal sign, my plus, and my s. And I looked at this problem, I flipped it around, and I said 711 plus s, or what, equals 713. I counted on and realized that s equals 2. So again, algebra takes a little time and thought and patience, but you can do it if you take the time. Good luck with this lesson.